That's Nick.
And that's Joseph. And today we're here to talk about Anyone But You, the seventh film directed by Will Gluck, which Sony is releasing on December 22nd, 2023.
Do I know a Will Gluck film?
You do, because I was a fan of Easy A with Emma Stone,
Yes.
which was his second film. And also Friends with Benefits with
Dustin Timberlake.
And Mila Kunis and Patricia Clarkson and and then he did a pair of Peter Rabbit films that I haven't seen. Also the Annie remake in 2014, which I'm not a fan of.
With Jamie Foxx?
And Cameron Diaz, yeah.
This movie, after an amazing first date, Bea and Ben's fiery attraction turns ice cold until they find themselves unexpectedly reunited at a destination wedding in Australia. So they do what any two mature adults would do, pretend to be a couple.
Mm-hmm. So this is a contemporization of Shakespeare's Much Ado About Nothing.
What's your pull quote?
Despite springing from fertile source material and brandishing two likable leads who actually have considerable chemistry, Anyone But You will likely have you saying, "Hey, nani nani."
Okay. Mine. The only person who should be happy with this movie is Natasha Bedingfield. We'll get to that in a minute.
Mm-hmm. And "Hey, nani nani" is from Sigh No More, Ladies, Sigh No More, from Much Ado About Nothing. It basically means whatever.
Oh, okay. Okay, starting with the positive, what did I like? Like you said, the leads, Sydney Sweeney and Glen Powell, I think they're really cute together, separately. I like their presence on screen, both of them.
Likeable, yeah.
Yes. I like how the film was shot. Mm-hmm. It's nice and clean, vibrant.
Danny Ruhlmann, you liked his cinematography?
I did. Okay, but this story and the comedic writing, I mean, it's a no for me.
I think that I enjoy well enough modern Shakespeare adaptations, but I don't know, you got to make it make sense for the times, I guess. And this just feels a little bit all over the place, but there was a way to make this a slapstick worthy of Howard Hawks.
So Bea and Ben, Sydney Sweeney and Glen Powell. So they have like a meet cute. It's the opening scene. She runs into a coffee shop and she wants to use the bathroom, but the barista won't give her the key because she's not a paying customer, but the line is really long. So Glen Powell's character sees her and says, "Hey, wife, let me order you your drink. Oh, and by the way, can she get the key?" So that's how they meet. And then they end up spending the entire day and night together. She goes back to his place. They don't have sex. They just fall asleep. And in the morning, when she wakes up, she just walks out. And Glenn sees her sneak out. Mm-hmm. So he's upset. As she's walking away, she calls her sister to say, "I met this amazing guy." And the sister's like, "Well, why aren't you with him now?" "I don't know. Let me run back." And when she runs back, we need to talk about the details of this scene. But when she runs back, she sees that Glen Powell is at home and his best friend has shown up, played by GaTa. Mm-hmm. And he's telling the best friend, like, "Yeah, that girl, she means nothing to me. She's a disaster.
I couldn't get her out of here fast enough."
And she overhears it. So now she's upset. Then we flash forward some time and we see that they meet at a nightclub because Glen Powell's best friend, GaTa, his sister is marrying or in a relationship with Sydney Sweeney's sister. So when Sydney Sweeney and Glen Powell like meet again for the first time in whatever indeterminate amount of time has passed, they are like beta fish.
You said War of the Roses. Like they are a divorced couple meeting again after
It's unbelievable.
a bitter breakup.
Yeah, it's unbelievable why they're so mean to each other. But the next scene is the wedding invite for the two sisters, the lesbians. And it's a destination wedding to Australia. Mm-hmm. And of course, Sydney Sweeney and Glen Powell will be there. They're also on the same flight there. Uh-huh. Then the question is, how do these two end up getting together? Because
their animosity seems like it's going to disrupt the proceedings. So the bridal party agrees to work together to have them fall in love by having conversations.
Which is so stupid. Yeah. But it's so, of course, you would think that Glen Powell and Sydney Sweeney would not fall for that, but they decide to do it because part of the bridal party is this woman who is the cousin of GaTa. And Glen Powell had like a summer romance with this woman, but she broke his heart. So Glen Powell's thinking, well, and it's actually Sydney Sweeney's idea, if this chick sees you with me, she'll get jealous. Because apparently women want what they can't have.
Apparently. Is that what Nancy Meyers meant about what women want?
And then Sydney Sweeney's character, we need to talk more about her relationship, but apparently since she was like 11 years old, she's been attached to this guy who they had a brief separation. And during that time, that's when she met Glen Powell. But after Glen Powell, they got engaged, but she broke off the engagement. But her parents, played by Dermot Mulroney,
and Rachel Griffiths, who I think there's an in-joke about her playing an American because she is Australian.
They really believe she should be with Justin. So they invited him to the wedding without telling Sydney Sweeney. So she's like, well, if we pretend, you and me and Glen Powell, if we pretend to be together, Justin will get the hint that we'll never have a chance.
And they're also doing that pressure thing because she's the older daughter, so she should have been married first.
So, of course, they start pretending to be together, but then they actually start to develop feelings, but then they have a falling out, and then, of course, they get back together, the end.
And all of the reasons for the falling in and out are real flimsy.
I'm just going to go through my notes. So I did think the opening was promising because I thought, oh, this is going to be a really cute slapstick comedy. Mm-hmm. And not that I expected this, but wouldn't it have been amazing if this were like a bringing up baby? Because I think these two actors could have pulled something like that off. And the opening scene where I think it's in the trailer where she's like in the bathroom trying to dry her wet crotch with the hand dryer. Mm-hmm. It was a fun start. And I'm sorry to this person, I don't know who they are, but as soon as GaTa shows up.
Well, he's in a series called Dave, I think, playing himself, and he's also in the new House Party remake. But yeah,
the minute he popped up, because then the movie just starts to not make sense.
It's the exposition, because again, they're shackled to this Shakespearean spirit that they're trying to imbue the film with and keep the same things. And it's like, I don't know, when you modernize something, you can kind of give away some of that stuff.
So where things go wrong is as soon as Sydney Sweeney leaves there, like in the morning after they've had this great night together where they were not sexual, which I think is important later on in the film. In the time it takes Sydney Sweeney to walk out of his apartment, loft, warehouse, wherever he lives, let's just say to give it the benefit of the doubt, like a 10-minute walk.
And it's not even.
But it probably is only like a couple minutes. During that brief period, GaTa shows up to Glen Powell's apartment. And he's like, where's the girl of your dreams? And then Glen Powell's character has a big wrench in his apartment.
On display.
Which we find out is like something his mother gave him as a symbol of like, you can fix anything or something.
And he's like handling it.
And so GaTa's like, wait, you showed this girl your mom's wrench? Wow, you really must be in love. It's all so crunchy. And then we see Sydney Sweeney leave his apartment by walking down the stairs. And this apartment looks like a huge loft. But when she returns, because she's telling her sister, oh my God, I don't know why I left this man. Let me go back to him. She's on the street and she just opens the door and we see right into...
The door is still open.
I don't understand the logistics of any of that. But then she overhears Glen Powell saying nasty stuff about her.
Yeah, immediately he's like, oh, I kicked her to the curb.
And it was already ridiculous to me, but you brought up a good point. Like, we needed a moment where maybe we understand that, like, is it possible that she went to get coffee? Or you don't even know this lady. This was an impromptu date. Maybe she had to, like, rush off to work.
Maybe she's late for work.
Yeah.
Maybe she wanted to bring you croissants. Something.
He's immediately mad.
Can you give it a minute? And if that is... Or we need to backtrack and explain in his characterization that he has abandonment issues, maybe. Something that makes that make more sense.
Well, let's talk more about him and his issues, because we really don't know anything about him. But he's called an F-boy.
Quite a lot.
And then he even says at a point, like, well, I embrace that moniker. But I don't think Glen Powell's character reads like an F-boy.
He doesn't.
An F-U-C-K boy.
He doesn't behave that way at all. He
actually seems like a really sweet, sensitive guy.
Who has a great job.
Yeah, he has his shit together. He's handsome, responsible. I don't get that vibe from him.
Knows how to interact with people in every other conceivable way.
And then Sydney Sweeney's character seems like she's at a crossroads because we see she's withdrawn from law school. She clearly broke up with her fiance because it would seem like they say that this guy, Justin, who she broke up with, is like the only guy she's ever been with. But then this lady stays trying to dole out like dating and relationship advice because she's trying to be the one to say like, oh, well, this is how we should act as a couple. But it's like, how you know? What have you been successsul at? Like, I just found it odd. Like, while I liked her and the actor, I thought the character was really like, why would Glen Powell even want to be with her?
Right.
It just they just don't seem like they belong together. Okay, the wedding invite for the lesbians, I thought it was cute because they basically send out a video of them getting married. So you're like, oh wow, they got married. But then they all of a sudden go, no, you're invited to our wedding.
Well, no, are there any objections?
Oh, that's right.
And Dermot Mulroney's like, I object. Their friends should be here.
Okay, my next note was none of the people in this movie, except maybe the leads, act like real human beings.
Oh, no, not at all.
The parents from both sides, so it's Dermot Mulroney.
All notable people, Dermot and Rachel, who have nothing to do but be ridiculous. And also, you have the Australian treasure Bryan Brown as the stepdad of Alexandra Shipp in GaTa.
I thought he was cute.
He was cute. He has a couple moments. He's remember Cocktail and Gorillas in the Mist, and FX. But and then his wife is played by Michelle Hurd, who you know from Bad Hair.
Yes. They are just all so awkward. And then the brides, the lesbians, I thought they were really stiff. Then the cousin who brings along her Australian meathead boyfriend who just felt like a caricature.
Because he is. The lesbians are so one-dimensional. It's just like, oh, I guess thank God for the legalization of gay marriage so that they can also be in the background.
And be boring.
For the benefit of heterosexual nonsense.
So these are very rich people. The bridal party, which consists of 11 people, it would seem, although there are no maids of honor, so I don't know what's happening, but the core 11 people are all staying at the one parent's house, which is like this palatial estate on the ocean.
By the sea.
But this felt like a COVID movie to me because all we see are the 11 people in this huge palace, and then we finally get to the wedding, which is not at the house. That old little tiny ass wedding, it just seemed like all this commotion, all this stress. The brides are stressing out about this wedding.
Did it seem like it was much ado about nothing?
It really did, which I guess is appropriate, but
sure.
It felt pointless and stressful.
But it's also is Australia the focal point only because of the stepdad, the Bryan Brown character? Couldn't y'all have come to the U.S.? I don't know.
Okay, so then the parents, when they try to execute this plan of getting the two together, at one point, one of the moms convinces Glen Powell and Sydney Sweeney to go swimming, which felt so... I just don't understand, I understand that Glen Powell and Sydney Sweeney are adopting this plan because they have their own motives, but the rest of the family just seems so dumb. Y'all really think this is gonna work? Because they're acting like... I wrote down this movie should have been called Ear Hustling because the entire movie is just people overhearing other people or trying to be overheard to the point where it's ridiculous.
But again, that works in a production of Shakespeare's play because it's funny. Because the artifice of it on stage,
sure.
or in the Brana film even, not Joss Whedon's, that you can see where that makes sense because it's funny because you're in this world.
It didn't work for me in this one.
It doesn't work for this, but it could have. It could have been...
I did think a funny moment of them swimming to get sunglasses is we see that while Glen Powell is obviously in fantastic physical form, he says he doesn't do any cardio, so he can't swim to the boat.
I don't believe that he doesn't do cardio.
It was cute though because Sydney has to basically rescue him from the water.
Well, she tells him he's hot girl fit.
Yeah, that was cute.
And he gets upset. I don't believe there's a situation on the plane involving a cookie.
Oh.
I don't believe either of these people are currently eating cookies.
Well,
at the time of filming.
We're going to get to the cookie. Another scene in the trailer that I kind of thought was pointless is Glen Powell's character ends up having this huge like tarantula spider in between his ass cheeks.
There's no way.
I mean, it just feels so random. Like, how did that spider get in there? And then how did you not feel it? So he gets fully naked and throws his clothes over the cliff. So then we get like an extended scene of him just being naked. And then he has to share clothes with Sydney Sweeney. So he ends up just wearing like a little bitty like thong. But the way he's just standing there and acting like nothing's weird.
And they're upstaged by a koala.
A koala. I didn't think any of that was funny.
I hated that scene.
And GaTa talking to the koala. I didn't think any of it was funny.
GaTa, as Pete is his character name, he is kind of doing that thing that Tracy Morgan was almost always used for. Is like this idiot savant.
But the thing is, Tracy Morgan says funny stuff, especially in 30 Rock. Like, they were writing funny lines for him. So even though he seemed random, it was... I was reading, because GaTa in this movie has a dog named Klonopin.
That was dumb.
And I was reading that GaTa is bipolar, and I think Klonopin is used to treat, like, mania.
Okay.
So maybe that's the relevance, but I mean...
The dog being named Klonopin in this milieu feels like it's trying too hard to be funny.
Sydney calls her parents Black Hawk helicopter parents. I did think that was funny.
There are moments that I chuckled, but...
It also seemed like there wasn't enough story to fill in the 90 minutes, because we get like there's a moment where Glen Powell's character wants to be nice to Sydney Sweeney's parents, so he's teaching Dermot Mulroney how to dive, and I thought that was so awkward. Like, Dermot Mulroney's character seems like so pitiful, and
it does, and that's where we learn that he injured his shoulder jumping off of a train to meet Rachel Griffiths at the Eiffel Tower when they were young, because you have to make these grand gestures in romance.
And that's where, and we'll get to the grand gesture. But their rehearsal dinner is on this yacht in the bay in like Sydney, and
Sydney,
Australia. They're on this. Again, it felt like a COVID film. There were more staff working on the yacht than actual passengers. Mm-hmm. I didn't understand why these 11 people who were staying in this palace on the ocean felt the need to then rent a yacht to have a party. Because that party was so raggedy. Like, GaTa's DJing, the other 10 people are dancing, and then Glen Powell and Sydney Sweeney decide that, because they're still trying to convince everyone they're together, to reenact the Titanic scene at the front of the boat.
King of the world.
Blah, blah, blah. And then, of course, Sydney falls off into the water. But we've already established that Glen Powell can't swim. Mm-hmm. So he just dives in after her. I thought that was so stupid.
It should have been, but that would have worked as the grand gesture.
Maybe. But it's like, we know he can't swim.
He risked his life.
He also didn't notify anyone there was a man overboard. So when he dives off, no one knows they've dived off until it's too late and the boat can't turn around. So they have to call harbor rescue. A helicopter lifts them up out of the water. And that's when we learn Glen Powell has a fear of flying.
Although it would seem he has more of a fear of heights.
Right. But then so she's like, well, then how did you fly here? How do you, like, don't you fly for work a lot? And he said, yeah, I have my ritual. His ritual consists of, he needs to be in a cocoon. So I guess he always has to fly like business class so he can lay flat. He has to wear his eye mask. He needs a warm cookie. And he has to listen to Natasha Bedingfield's Unwritten.
His Serenity song.
His Serenity song for the entire flight.
For a 16-hour flight?
Which is where my pull quote came from.
I'll go insane.
So then they start singing Unwritten as they're being pulled up by the helicopter. And then that's where he gets the idea of his grand gesture. So after they have their falling out, the wedding happens. And Sydney Sweeney's character sees Glen Powell kissing cousins, and she gets mad and leaves. But they had talked earlier about how she wants to go visit the opera house. So he goes
she likes to watch people.
She likes to people watch.
Watch people in love.
So Glen Powell's like, I don't know where she is, but I think I know. And instead of him just taking a cab there like she did, he fakes drowning so that harbor rescue can airlift him to the opera house. I thought that was so annoying. You wasted those emergency resources.
Well, he had to request that they drop him off there, too. And then what's the grand gesture? All these strangers just see some man coming off in a helicopter.
Then it's like, he's acting like she's about to catch a flight to Africa and he'll never see her again. Mm-hmm. This lady just went to the opera house and all her shit is back at the house. So you know you're going to see her again in like an hour. Why didn't you just calmly get yourself there? Mm-hmm. And then he jumps off the helicopter and runs down the pier towards her. Like, this is the only time he'll ever get his chance to talk to her. I just thought that was so ridiculous.
Because it is.
And anticlimactic. Speaking of anticlimactic, the sex scene that these two have before they have their falling out, their initial date that was so wonderful was probably made even more special because they didn't have sex. So wouldn't you think that the first time they have sex would be like this really cool experience or really funny experience? But instead, it just plays like two adults who are kind of like wrestling a little bit, and they're kind of giggling and
It feels like the Friends with Benefits sex scene, which I thought was not very good. With
there was nothing.
Justin Timberlake and Mila Kunis, but it feels like, and I think the Fear of Flying bit for the Glen Powell character made me feel this, like it's an AI reboot of a Meg Ryan rom-com from the 90s, in particular French Kiss, where she has a fear of flying.
Okay. There were a couple of funny moments with Glen Powell because his character is really buttoned up and put together, but he does talk about, because he's, I think, a day trader. So he talks about, oh, well, back when I was on Wall Street, basically, there are two separate occasions where he says, like, well, I did crack once. And then he goes, well, I did meth once. I think he's a really cute actor.
He is, and it's nice to see him finally coming into his own. He was in Devotion with Jonathan Majors. He has this very minor role, of course, in Hidden Figures. For those who haven't seen Hitman yet, which will be coming out in 2024, you're in for a real treat. He's so damn good in that. He reminds me of a young Robert Redford.
Nice. Something that annoyed me so much is right before the wedding, Sydney Sweeney's character gets tasked with picking up the wedding cake. And then she brings that cousin along with her. I don't understand why these rich people would have someone go pick up the cake to bring it back home when the wedding is not at the house. So they had to transport the wedding cake to the site of the wedding. And then, of course, the wedding cake gets ruined before the wedding. So then we see in the end that they're cutting like a damaged cake. That was so distracting to me. All that money and all the things they've done, and they couldn't have a cake delivered?
All of it. It's like, it's the details on the periphery that don't make any damn sense. But the thing is, it could have.
Those lesbians' wedding vows were garbage.
Yes. Well, especially because the white one, who is also in the new George Clooney movie, Boys in the Boat. And I thought Hadley Robinson, I thought she was equally kind of, doesn't make much of an impression.
She's not going on my worst hair list, but I hated her wedding updo. I hated it.
Well, her hair did start on fire at one point in the movie.
Oh, that's right. At one point, her hair starts on fire, and then her fiance is like cutting
with
big chunks
scissors.
of hair with like construction paper scissors.
You're making it worse.
Why? You people are rich, and you're like near Sydney. Why don't you just go to a hair salon and get your hair?
It'd be nice to see Alexandra Shipp kind of get a role that's not like this, because we've seen her in many productions. She was one of the Barbies, and she has a nice moment in the Shaft remake from a couple years ago, but she really doesn't have anything to do in this either.
Who's the older British guy who's the stepfather?
Bryan Brown's Australian.
Oh, Australian, I'm sorry. He has a funny line where he refers to Sydney Sweeney's character as that mumbling girl, because she does mumble.
That's the thing. Like, I like her, but she also seems real lackadaisical about...
The most lively part of this movie was the end credits, because we see that it's basically like a gag reel where the director, for every scene in the movie, had the actors singing Natasha Bedingfield's Unwritten. So we get like a 3-minute montage of the actors from every scene in the movie singing bits to the song. And I felt like that energy is what we needed throughout the movie then.
Which is the energy I felt like wasn't something like Easy A.
This movie felt like Ticket to Paradise to me.
I liked it better than Ticket to Paradise because of
the leads.
Well, the privileged white people that are at the center of it, I at least was led to enjoy watching on screen, unlike all of the people in Ticket to Paradise, which uses some of the exact same tropes about these parents being concerned about their daughter giving up the profession that she has spent all this money pursuing. But it also reminded me of something I really didn't like, The Proposal, where those leads had absolutely no chemistry.
Sure. The ending of this movie reminded me of Tyler Perry's The Medea Homecoming, because I remember all the promo being that like Medea is gonna like mimic Beyonce and Homecoming.
Sure.
And I didn't care for that movie, but then at the end, during the end credits, we get Beyonce or Medea doing Beyonce and Homecoming. And I thought that was really funny. So it's always weird when a film ends with like the vibe that you wish the entire movie would have had.
Sure.
What would you give Anyone But You?
I think due to Ms. Sweeney and Mr. Powell, it earns a 2. And
I don't even think I would recommend this on an airplane. I would give it 2 out of 5. Anything else?
no.
Hit the thanks button. Listen to our podcast. Bye.